And our next session, we're going to have a panel discussion on pivoting to off-premise that will be hosted by Rob Grimes. So off-premise dining has become a necessity to many food service operators over the past year. No matter how you define off-premise, whether it's curbside, delivery, takeout, online ordering, or catering, there are several ways to accommodate the new extensions to your operation. There are differences in approach and considerations for each off-premise offering based on the requirements of each industry segment. In this panel discussion, you will hear from representatives of key segments of QSR, fast casual, full service, and fine dining. The panel will share their experiences and ideas on the ways they have implemented off-premise to meet industry challenges and how it has impacted their business and poised them for long-term growth. I'll turn things over to Rob, and on to you.
Great. Well, thank you, and welcome back from the break. I hope everybody enjoyed the wine and cheese in the lobby. That was really good. And whenever you're working with the Restaurant Association, we have the best snacks. So first of all, let me just say that this is clearly a very important subject to us. However, I really hate the word pivot in this because we've all heard it so much. And the interesting thing is that this discussion that we're going to have today really is going to talk about the pivot, but it's really a pivot, one-way pivot, meaning that how do we capitalize and how do we use it going forward? If we could go to the next slide, please. First of all, let me do a little bit more of an introduction to the Ifbta. Many of you already know the Ifbta. I see some very familiar faces here, and a couple of my bosses from the board are on this call too. So, but the Ifbta, the International Food and Beverage Technology Association, is a not-for-profit trade association, obviously working specifically focused on food and beverage technology, not just in the restaurant business, but across the board and everything from hotels to C-stores and things like that. It is a membership organization, and it is open to all operators and suppliers. Everyone has an equal seat at the table. There is no selling in the Ifbta, so it's very much like the study group and the community in that way. It is a global reach and has local chapters. There are 10 of them today, plus virtual chapters, and there's some outside the US as well. And we have the industry's only certification program in technology, in information technology across the board. And it's about 20 modules, about 60 different sites. And we have many partnerships with other associations, both at the state level, but also probably one of our proudest and biggest ones is with the Restaurant Association itself. Next slide. So today, and if my speakers would go ahead and unmute themselves, we're going to go ahead and have a conversation, but I'd like to say that Kevin was pretty good at pointing out sort of, we tried to do a mix of operations on this session, but I want us to realize that it's more than a mix than we probably realize. We have tried to make sure that we have everything from QSR to fast casual to full service and what people and luxury as well. And you'll hear that from our speakers. We also have a mix of organizations that are larger and smaller, ones that are international and only in North America. But more importantly, and this may go back to a couple of comments made in the introduction that I did, we also have 2 CEOs on here, plus 2 IT professionals. You obviously all know the IT professionals, you probably don't know the CEOs. And so we have a unique opportunity on this panel to not only discuss what we're doing in off-premise from the IT perspective, but the operations perspective and also the future strategy and vision, but also to hear from some CEOs as to how they view this and how it mixes and what their challenges and what their thinking is. So it's really sort of a 2 or 3-way mixed panel, and it's really a great group. We are going to do an open Q&A session for the last 10 minutes. If you want, you can submit your questions in the chat, and then we'll go ahead and monitor those, and we can bring them up as we go along if there's time, but we certainly will try to do as much as we can an open discussion towards the end. And I think following the example in the last session, we can even have a microphone opened up for this as well. So with that, I'd like each one of our panelists to briefly introduce themselves, their company, and just their perspective on the off-premise side. And I think Alex, we're going to go ahead and start with you.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Alex Eagle. I'm CEO of a brand called Freebird's World Burrito. We operate in the fast casual segment, primarily in Texas, and our main focus is on burritos and bowls. And recently, consumer surveys conducted by Nation's Restaurant News, we were recognized for our craveable food products. So we're super excited about that, and believe off-premises is absolutely the future for our industry, and we're embracing it before, and we'll continue to embrace it going forward, before the pandemic, that is.
Great. Well, thank you for that. Next, Bob.
Hi, my name is Bob Surbeck. I'm the Vice President of Restaurant Systems for Cheesecake Factory. Been there just over 10 years now, and very excited to be here and chat with everybody. COVID has certainly presented some interesting challenges for us, and I think, like most organizations, we're trying to figure out what's going to stick and what's not going to stick. So as we talk about pivoting to off-premise, a lot of that we already did. So now we have to figure out of the changes that we made that we'll get into during this panel discussion. What's going to stick and what will go back. So looking forward to chatting with everybody.
Great, thank you, Bob. Kathleen.
I'm Kathleen Chugg, the CIO for Nando's Peri Peri in North America. As everyone else has mentioned, we were focusing on a lot of different things in our tech strategy. And when the COVID happened, we were lucky to have kind of just recently rolled out some things. So we were able to optimize or add other modules. We were just entered into a pilot on some things. So we were able to quickly kind of then readjust our roadmap. And like everyone mentioned, determining what then becomes what we carry forward in the future is the part that's being considered here today.
Great. And Vince. Yep. You need to unmute, Vince.
Sorry, Rob. I was going to use pivot multiple times in my opening speech, but my name is Vince Van Brun. I'm the CEO of Centrarchy Restaurant Group here in Atlanta. We've got 14 restaurants in the Southeast. 7 varying concepts, so it's quite complicated. It wasn't as nimble as just having one single restaurant with the same platform. But we struggled for the first 3 weeks of March, like many, after kind of throwing everything, including the kitchen sink, at the wall and not a lot sticking. We decided to close the restaurant for our group. Studied the market for a little bit, living in an urban market like I think a few of you folks live in Chicago or New York or San Francisco. COVID was quite different than out in the burbs or in tier 2, 3, or 4 markets. We were fortunate enough to have a few near the beach, and mid-May we decided to start reopening. We took a little bit of a different strategy, empowered our operating partners to be very, very nimble, introduced online takeout, which we had dabbled with in the past but didn't work out very well, but just took a one-size-doesn't-fit-all approach to reopening. And we strategically opened a few stores a week, limiting our menus. We had some larger legacy buildings that we decided to really take COVID advantage and make smaller footprints. But all in all, really forced our group to be nimble and empowered our operators to kind of be their own entrepreneurs. At the same time, we didn't want to overburden them with too many changes, knowing the operating environment was already pretty crazy. So all in all, we still recognize, while introducing some new things, that the guest experience, exuberant, inspired hospitality, and our ability to execute will actually dictate the future. But we're super excited about 21 and what's ahead.
Great. Well, thank you. So with that introduction, I'm actually going to go ahead and put both Alex and Vince on the spot and just ask you a quick question. Many people define off-premise many different ways. How do you both define off-premise? Alex?
It really pretty simply is any anytime our product's being consumed outside of the four walls, outside of our restaurant. So it could still involve a guest coming to the restaurant to pick up the order and take it away. It doesn't necessarily mean delivered. So that's how I look at it.
Great, Vince.
Being in the high-end restaurant space, I look at it as a headache. But I think the second that it leaves the expo line and gets packaged, that's where it starts. It's that first set of eyes, then it's that second set of eyes, and then it's that seamless transition from car to table. We really work hard to envision ourselves eating that dish as we're expediting it out of that window, because we're traditionally looking at a plate. We've taken a little bit of a different approach and taken an each plate for each guest look, ensure those boxes are presented as well as they are in our dining rooms. So it's been quite a transition for us.
So I promised you all we were going to do a conversational Q&A here. So you just said the word headache. Now I'm sort of curious from Kathleen and Bob's point of view. Was off-premise a headache for you guys, or was it, how did you define it, within your organizations? Kathleen.
Yeah, I'll address that. From an operations perspective, obviously our off-premise we shifted right from dine-in being maybe an 80-20 to 20-80 potentially during COVID. I think the thing that helped us to make it not a headache for operations was we focused on delivery integration into our point of sale. So we utilized our leveraging ordering platform and the software that they had and able to push it into the POS. So we took away the time for operations to either have to key it in and or potential accuracy issues. So that really helped resolve the potential headache that could have happened.
Hey, Bob, I got Cheesecake Factory and your units are huge units. So what did off-premise really mean to you, or how did you take advantage of that?
We had been doing online ordering and established a partnership with DoorDash previous to COVID. So those ordering methods and handoff methods were not anything new to us. Thank goodness for that. But it certainly was a challenge shifting the majority of our sales to those handoff modes. I think when you also couple those types of orders with reduced staff, it presented different headaches, certainly. Maybe less so from a technology perspective, but I think we're probably all in that same boat. We're very passionate about trying to have that experience, whether it's you've come to our restaurant, picked up your own food, or whether a DoorDash driver is delivering the food. We want that food to be as close to the experience inside the restaurant as possible. So, similar to what Vince was saying, is that's what we focus on inside the restaurant, but we certainly grapple with the fact that we don't have a ton of control once that bag leaves the restaurant.
So Alex, in your environment, were you've taken a look at off-premise, anything that's served outside the restaurant off-premise. Did you have to make some changes in your operations to shift the percentage of business that were on-premise to off-premise?
Well, we were lucky that our e-commerce site was, already optimized to include delivery. So we were ready. But I would say something that was a key driver for us that we were added quickly to our e-commerce site was curbside. And that remains a significant percentage of our sales are now guests who indicate that they want their order brought out to their vehicle. Which presented some new operational challenges for us. And then we're also pretty fortunate where Kathleen mentioned integrations with third-party delivery companies that we were already ready for those integrations, and we're able to add partners to capture more sales, which I think are, for the most part, incremental with additional partnerships. But it did strain, as you've heard some of the other panelists say, how we produce orders. And so that also caused us to take a look at OTF lines for production only for off premises, as well as kitchen screens to support those productions instead of using a traditional chit to assemble the order.
Now, I don't want to put the words in anybody's mouth, but it sounds like each one of you had if you did not have things in place already, the suppliers that you were working with already had the technology in place to implement this and put it in. Would that be a correct statement for Vince? You made a shift in this area. Was that a correct statement for you?
One more time.
Whether the suppliers that you used for technology enabled you to make the shift sort of seamlessly. Well, I mean, I understand you had to do packaging, you had to do things different in your menu, but technology-wise, was your base in place?
No, it was kind of mom and pop, and we looked to Chow Now and Open Table. We weren't really one of the early adapters. What we didn't want to do, again, is burden our operators with new technology. I think we've all been through the Uber, the Grubhub, the 7 different iPad screens as all those things were initially rolled out. We wanted to keep it really simple, so we looked to groups that we were already working with. Open Table now has an online ordering platform. We were one of the early adapters, and Chow Now as well. Where we've really found some success with both those partners is pre-ordering. It's kind of the COVID version of catering now, since we're not doing a lot of business catering like we used to. I'm really shocked not being a pre-planner, especially when it comes to my personal life. We're seeing a tremendous amount of volume of people ordering even a cheeseburger 7, 10, 20 months out. We've walked into some shifts. It's crazy, especially Friday night, Saturday night.
How do you keep the food warm that long?
Well, yeah, right. No, it can be problematic at times, but we walked into a bunch of shifts recently with those 2 platforms doing the pre-orders, sometimes with 25% of our sales already locked in for the day. And we found it very accretive to days where we naturally have a lot of takeout and our dining rooms are actually full. It's been a real blessing for us. So we tried to keep it simple. We didn't want to overcomplicate it to the guys. And again, having 7 different concepts, it complicates things a little bit, all having different needs, all having different packaging, all having different menus. It was really quite a challenge for us.
So you have well, I wasn't thinking about the different concepts and the different menus, because if we think about how many different menu items that is, but Bob, I know, you guys are famous for having the book, right, of menu items. Did you guys have to scale down or re-engineer your menu in order to make the change?
I think the short answer is no. The long answer is Cheesecake Factory. I think most folks know we're very brand sensitive, and we sort of do what we do, and I think we've been fairly successful doing it for quite a while now. So we did not go from 250 menu items to 100, let's say. We just stayed steadfast in making sure that the guests that love us and want to come to us for that extensive menu didn't have any change affect them in that regard. So no, didn't change the menu.
Great. Kathleen, in your environment, you did say that you were prepared, you had the pieces in there. Were there some things that came up that you just weren't prepared for, that you needed to put something new in place to handle?
I think like we just rolled out Olo in Canada, and we had just finished rolling it out. We didn't have kind of like curbside deployment on our list for like later in the year, but we were able to kind of then pull that up and say, okay, that's a need, like kind of Alex had mentioned, right? It was a good win for them. So that was one piece. I think the other was we had just started a pilot with Uber in the US. And we'd been running it for a couple months right before COVID had started with our deployment plan that was supposed to be sometime, late spring. And so we were able to accelerate and bring that up and roll that out. So, and then we were able to then transition that to Canada as well. So we had some things in motion, just pulled them up a little quicker so we could actually start getting the benefits from that.
Is that pretty much, across the board, any of you that want to answer this, are there specific things that you had sort of on your list, or your IT people had on your list that they wanted to do that got accelerated, that you just ended up putting, either they got put in place quicker because than they expected budget wise, or you got something in place quicker that you just wanted to do all along, and this really drove it ahead?
I can jump in on that because it's rather interesting. A few projects that actually weren't even on the list that were quickly approved and implemented. I could probably rattle off like 4 examples. Kathleen mentioned Olo. We have a couple different brands under our umbrellas, North Italia as well as Grand Lux Cafe. There weren't plans to implement Olo in those brands, but we did to try to help them with the takeout business. A couple other items, with Cheesecake Factory, we're very sensitive in making sure that when guests come to the restaurant in the places where our dining rooms were open, that guests felt safe as well as our staff felt safe. So in typical fashion, you would walk up to the host stand and put your name on the list. Our lobbies are small, and we wanted to make sure that social distancing could be something that was achievable. So we quickly pivoted and implemented, we upgraded our table management system that allowed us to use iPads and do remote greeting, so outside the building. That upgrade and that implementation wasn't on the list, but we had to quickly pivot using your keyword there, Rob, and get that approved and implemented, which is great. We actually completed that in all Cheesecake Factories in 6 weeks.
Wow. Hey, Alex, I know that there's a whole bunch of things that you have on your list, or you may be being pushed to have on your list. Is there anything that moved ahead that either you wanted to move ahead because of this and became a priority, or are there some things that your team was looking for to move ahead that became a priority?
Well, there's a lot of user experience enhancements on our e-commerce site that I would have liked to have accelerated, but we were not well able to. So I would say what really happened that ended up being prioritized is the addition of new products that we normally would have put through more rigorous testing, but we just decided to roll out. And being 55 restaurants and not nationwide, we were able to be nimble and roll out new products, as well as we did reduce sort of what we felt we didn't get credit for that was on our menu. So certain items that we didn't feel we got credit for that gave us a competitive advantage, we did remove for efficiency. So I know that's not in the tech realm, but those are some things we did do quickly.
Well, it's interesting, when somebody says that something's not in the tech realm, and I'm not going to debate that on it, but I'm going to guess that a lot of people were using their systems to go figure out what the right mix was and the changes were that was probably coming from the technology that they had.
Absolutely, yeah.
So let me just keep you on the spot for 1 second, Alex. So you said that there were some things that you wish on your e-commerce that might have been in there quicker or something. Are there things because of this that you are pushing forward with this year to make those things happen quicker? And did you loosen up on your IT budget for this year?
Absolutely. To answer loosening up the budget is definitely ballooned, as has the PMIX, this percentage of sales that comes through our e-commerce site. But some of the things that we were able to finally relaunch in December that I would have liked to have seen rolled earlier are easy reordering functionality to drive frequency on our e-commerce site, as well as to drive attachments. We have a menu optimization, sort of a workflow for the guest that makes it easier for them to check out and include chips and dips and beverages, something that we'd been working on that I wish could have come earlier in the pandemic last year than it did, but it is now on our new website, relaunched December 28th.
There you go. So Kathleen, I think you had mentioned that you guys had put some new types of things in place to do some catering off premise that you might not have had before.
Yeah, so we actually, to kind of build upon too what Alex was saying, looked at all of our platforms that we were allowing our food to be sold on and really looked at optimizing them. So we did have a catering platform, but we looked at adding more, kind of the boxed lunch, right, type of thing versus, the typical kind of in a pan because of COVID. But also looking at our own sites and even the delivery service provider sites of, here's our menu. What about ads and modifiers? Just being able to use the data and the PMix and be able to kind of look at optimizing, what we're selling and switching it around, some of the order and the sequencing, things just to make it easier for guests to get those ones that we were starting to see more of a trend towards, because we did see a shift in what guests were ordering during COVID versus probably prior, because they were using us maybe more for dinner than in the past. They were using us for lunch when they were just kind of coming down from their office, but they weren't working in their office. So spending a lot of time just on what I'd call menu optimization and making sure you're helping enhance sales.
Do you believe that you're going to continue the catering box and some of those things you put in place post-COVID?
Definitely. Yeah.
Definitely. So, okay, Vince, we've hosted a number of meetings in your private dining rooms, and you mentioned, the amount of catering and things you've done. What changes have you made? I mean, is there a catering business still there now, more than just, delivering a box, of something for off-premise, perhaps single dining? What changes are you making in that area going forward, and do you think they will stick past COVID?
Well, for us, when it comes to private dining in our steakhouses, we historically had done, selling out group dinners for the entire restaurant. We've worked really, really hard to curate both a virtual wine experience that's a little more boutique-y and works for smaller groups around 20 to 24, maybe at a higher price point. We've had a lot of success with that. Catering in our casual restaurants, between having vans and catering managers, we had quite a bit of bodies. We took a hard look while we were closed. One, recognized that there wasn't going to be a lot of business volume coming out of it. And for the most part, we've kind of moved on from it, knowing that takeout now is taking up so much of our time and our capacity. And really, the voodoo economics of catering are very hard to kind of identify whether it's a real profit center or not. So once you add it all up, it was a little bit more of a drag on our finances than we thought, and we decided to pass on it for a while. But we're starting to see some smaller groups come back. We're starting to see the business group come back. They love those small, intimate settings where they're not part of the restaurant. So there's actually been quite a bit of a demand for the private dining rooms in a different way than in the past. Larger celebrations of 10 or 12. Some smaller business groups. Because
they don't want to be in the dining room. They would have taken a big table before.
Yeah. And they're kind of protected in a controlled environment. It's worked out very well for us. We actually have a lot of demand for that.
And just one more thing, because Kathleen mentioned the catering boxes, and my email today has been splattered with things from like Capital Grill and Morton's, about the dinners for two, even the smaller groups that are here for Valentine's Day coming up, which must have been a big day for you guys pre-COVID. Are you seeing the packaging of meals? And by the way, I'll take it one step further. I see different restaurants, steakhouses selling their meats, that you can take home. Are you doing any of those things?
We've done it all. We do bottled cocktails that you order online, which are really cool. You can get a 16-ounce Negroni pre-made. What's been great for us is we've got the average tenure of our operating partners is 20 years. And they've really started becoming their own entrepreneurs. The number of ideas that were coming forward to us pre-COVID versus during COVID are pretty incredible. They're bringing a lot of things forward. But we've tried it all. We haven't had a lot of success with the butchery. We've had a lot of success, again, going back to the pre-order and creating that New York Prime pre-packaged experience with a Spotify playlist and bringing it home, really trying to create that vibe that you can only get in a restaurant at home. And I do think that's here to stay. I compare it to Whole Foods and what the grocery stores do. Right. There's always incredible demand to have it, pre-cooked food taken home.
So you're probably going to go back and revisit that decision as to how you're going to track, whether the off-premise becomes a separate day part and the catering and stuff like that to go ahead.
Exactly. I don't know. Right? I've had a few P&Ls put in front of me that, in hindsight, I really start to have a few more questions than I did in the past. But it also requires labor and management. It's really hard to quantify in a restaurant that's already running what's solely dedicated to catering. So I'm challenged with that.
Right. So Kathleen and Bob, I believe both of you sell alcohol and beer and wine. Kathleen, you're selling beer and wine, right? Yeah. So one of the things that is being mentioned here by those who are delivering things that Vince just talked about, but is often missed, is that many jurisdictions didn't allow the delivery of alcohol before. And I don't think we're going to go back on that in the future. So that's a positive benefit, to it. What are the other packaged things that you have been selling and putting out there besides just the catering experience for off-premise, of things that you sold before that become much more revenue enhancement?
We didn't really do much with our menu because there was a demand for a great chicken, but we did actually try the alcohol and adding that on a couple stores. We're just not a big bar scene, to begin with. Selling alcohol as a smaller percentage in restaurant, that it didn't really translate to where you're reading it for other restaurants in Maine, right? They had more of an established, since we were just beer and wine, but we do have it available in some of our restaurants now with off-premise.
Bob?
Yeah, menu-wise, with like packaged, prepackaged, or catering types of things, we never really had a robust catering business pre-COVID, and didn't really go down that road too much during COVID. We did a few family meal type of things. Not sure that will come back post-COVID. Related to the alcohol, we obviously sell alcohol in our restaurants, and we're active in selling alcohol through our OLO channel. It is interesting though, because we didn't do it before because I think there were liquor license restrictions on being able to do that. It wasn't a part of our business. So I'm very interested to see how this plays out, as I think it could benefit us greatly if we can do this, if it continues.
Now, both you and Kathleen have operations outside the U.S. Bob, I'm not exactly sure how much IT, management, or at least knowing what they're doing in some of those operations. I've been to your one in Dubai at the bottom of the ski area, right? But you both have operations outside the U.S. Is there anything that you're observing in other parts of the world, or that your operators or partners are doing that would be helpful, that maybe hasn't been adopted here, but delivery was in other parts of the world long before it was here. Before, McDonald's didn't bring delivery here, so, are there some things that there's some lessons learned from your outside the U.S. operations that we should be thinking about?
I'll answer that. And where our other restaurants are, they actually were on full lockdown a lot longer. They couldn't even do takeaway or delivery where they were. So actually, they came when they started to open back up, look to us to get our learnings from what happened operationally in the restaurant. So we were able to actually, for a change, be able to give them some learnings. So, but again, this due to our restaurants where they are, the lockdowns kind of prohibited them from doing that.
Bob, did any of your partners, was it the same thing?
Yeah, same thing. The majority of our partners are in the Middle East. We have a few in China and Mexico. So very, very similar situation. Okay.
So we're going to go open up the mic in about 2 minutes. But before we do that, so each one of you in your own way has mentioned something that was something positive, out of this that you'll take forward, whether it's revenue wise or technology wise. What is the biggest learning that each of you has gotten out of this? And very specifically a learning, but also sort of eyes open in the technology space of an opportunity. Vince?
Change is good. I think our group has a tendency to fight change. And the group is incredibly much more open-minded, whether it be through technology, whether it be through food, whether it be a new style of service. And like I said, they've also opened their minds to being a little bit rigid and sticks in the mud. And now they're a little more open-minded and willing to try everything. It's been the best thing that's ever happened to our group. While it didn't feel good in the moment, it didn't feel going through it. We had the opportunity to really address low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, by the way, before we go to the next one, I hosted a webinar a while back that was for the on-site non-traditional premise people that run airports and highways. And they said they've been through this before with 9/11, because with 9/11, they had to shut down the airports and the travel. So they've been through it before, but we haven't been through this before that I can remember of any of us, on the dining side of it. So, Kathleen, is there something that just really surprised you, positive or negative, that came out of this?
I think just from a positive perspective, across our organization, technology can drive sales, right? Maybe technology was more of a supporting organization or part of the, organization prior, that it can help drive sales. But I think to kind of build upon what Vince said, it also allowed for some of those conversations to happen, right? In a collaborative way, between, marketing and technology got stronger together and build up our MarTech over this past year than we had in the past. And so I think that's a huge benefit for us as an organization.
Yes, sir. Bob?
Yeah, it's just sort of echoing what Ben said. Partnering with executives and operations, and now they seem like they have more of a willingness to try something and be willing to fail quickly, assuming that it didn't work. That wasn't necessarily there pre-COVID, and is certainly here now. So it's an amazing positive outcome with COVID, that we can truly partner at a deeper level with ops and try to help them grow the business. On a negative side, having a team of 50 IT people within IT, 2020 was extraordinarily difficult for them. When you talk about being remote and you talk about having to react to the needs of the restaurants, almost a 24-hour a day job is really difficult on the people. So I'm hopeful that we can look back at 2020 and identify ways to make sure we're taking care of our teams, because it was really tough for a lot of folks.
I also would think that on the technology side, besides your people, you also had to now start supporting customers, who were calling in with different things, as well, that they might not have called you before. In that.
Yeah, I think that would, it depends on the size of the organization. So we're a pretty big company. We actually have a team that is dedicated to what we call guest services. And depending on what we were doing, whether it was a promotion that we never did before, the ebbs and flows of that group being contacted by guests, they were worked pretty hard as well.
Great. Alex?
Yeah, I'd say, the first thing is I don't hear anymore, any second guessing sort of a strategy that we're well underway to be positioned to support off premises, and our industry was really wrangling with it. At least, that is what I experienced in my office. Is it profitable, and should we be doing it? And I don't hear that much anymore. And I'm glad, because we're all in on this approach. I love the pivot of our guests consuming our product through our e-commerce site, because of the access to information that it gives you. You have tremendously more powerful business intelligence and consumer data that becomes available to you when people are leaving phone numbers and email addresses with their order versus just going through the line and leaving. Mm-hmm. So it's really all been positive for me, not without some stressful days, but I really think it's an exciting time for our industry to be heading more aggressively into off premises.
Great. So we have a few minutes left. I'd like to sort of open up, Patty or Lauren, if we can do that, the microphone. If anyone would like to ask a question of the panel, this is a good opportunity. We did get a couple of questions in as well, but I'd like to first open it up if anybody has a specific question that they want to ask.
Rob, it's Patty. Everybody can unmute themselves if they would like to ask a question.
Be nice to see people too. We have all these blank screens here, so where everybody's hiding themselves. But anyway, so let me just ask one that came in here in general. And I think Vince, I'm going to send this one to you. I know we've all sort of talked about the impact of COVID and past COVID on certain opportunities, but in general, someone has asked, what does the future of catering actually look like post-COVID, which is a different sort of question in it. And you guys do a lot of it. What does it look like?
I think it's, at least today, it's very similar to what Kathleen did. We've pivoted, for lack of better terms, to doing individual box meals, and had a lot of success with that. I think catering for us is going to be it's going to evolve into just being takeout. I think we're going to learn to get better at it, learn to be leaner, learn to be more efficient, learn to be more seamless, and broaden our offerings and leveraging that, again, using Chow Now and Open Table. It really gives us the opportunity to make it more seamless. I'm not spending a lot of time talking about catering right now. I think we're focusing on being great at takeout. I don't think with $15 an hour labor, I'm not real excited about the future of catering when it comes to high-end casual restaurants and steakhouses personally.
Hey, Bob, I appreciate greatly the background of sitting in one of your restaurants, but you know what it says to me? Vince made a comment earlier about how people who used to do large groups and large parties now want to use his private rooms. And you guys do large groups and large parties as well, but I don't think you have any private rooms. Are you going to reconfigure your operations? And by the way, I will be asking the other two if you're going to do any changes to your physical plant as well for the new future going forward. But Bob, are you going to reconfigure?
I would say we have to look at it. But to Vince's point, I think we have to look at it from more of a takeout and delivery perspective as opposed to private dining. I believe that guest behaviors have changed forever. Guests that experienced Cheesecake Factory during COVID that might not have come to us very often because they didn't want to wait in line. Well, maybe now they'll come to us more often because they realize that they can order their food and pick it up 25 minutes later. So we have to be smart about those things and make that experience the best experience that it can be. So I would think that anything is on the table, whether it's perhaps a go forward design update or looking at technology to enhance the experience as it is. I would think anything and everything is on the table.
Kathleen, did you want to add to that?
No, I agree completely with Bob. I think it's really looking at how does restaurants design look and help optimize operations for supporting both dine-in and off-premise that now might be a little bit more equal, right, than what they were before, because your split and mix might have been different. So each restaurant company needs to look at that and address it differently.
So Alex, you have mentioned several times your e-commerce site, and what does all the COVID data that you now have mean to you that is coming through your e-commerce and other channels that you're going to be able to use going forward in your business post-COVID?
Sure. I think it's going to be a game changer for how we can understand our guests and create segments of guests and be more targeted in our communications, focusing on what we know the guests' interests are. For example, somebody who only orders vegetarian items, we probably don't want to promote our brisket to when we do our brisket LTO. But we probably do want to make sure they know that we have Beyond Meat in our restaurants. So it's a game changer for us in really understanding consumer behaviors. And then one other thing quickly is we have a highly customizable product. So we don't know, how much of each ingredient goes in each item when you visit 4 walls, but we do know when the order comes through e-commerce. So it just gives us tremendous insights that we certainly had before, but it was only a fraction of the full pie. And now it's such a material portion of the pie. You can really feel confident in what you're looking at.
So there, by the way, is the comment from the CEO about the value of data, and why our budgets are where they are. So I'd like to conclude with one final question for each of you, and just a short answer on it. But someone has asked the question, and it doesn't have to be technology, by the way. I'm going to take license on that. What is the best innovation you implemented to help your business survive the pandemic? And, Alex, if you want to start, we'll go in the opposite order that we went before.
Well, we already had the e-commerce site with delivery functionality, so it was really the addition of curbside functionality, which is a material percentage of our sales and will continue to be. And that's also something physical plant. We're not signing leases anymore that don't have designated spots for curbside pickup. So that was it.
Great, Bob.
Yeah, we already had the online ordering and delivery fully integrated into our POS. So I would say, because we have a couple hundred restaurants across the country, we wanted to make sure that guests that could still dine in our restaurants felt safe. So we did two main things. We used QR codes in two different ways: QR code menu delivery, so that we weren't physically handing a menu, and then QR code payment at the end, so the guest wasn't handing their credit card off to the server.
Great. Kathleen?
For us, I would say curbside as well with Alex, and then also where I talked about the integration of delivery into the POS. And both of those were really big for us.
Great. And Vince, you get to close us up here.
I think the biggest thing for us is our executive group and director group got back in the stores. We needed to run a real lean model to open, so we put everybody at a store. In an effort to hedge our risk. But they were all amazed how many walls we put up the last 20 years in our group, and it's really broken a lot of them down. Now they're driving the change when it's been me driving a lot of the change. It's been invaluable having them back in the four walls.
I would say that's probably the same for almost all the businesses, including my own and the association. We really took advantage of the opportunity of drilled down in many areas that we wouldn't have before because we were just moving. I want to thank our panel. I think we got a pretty good cross section here, and we did get some pretty good questions and discussion, and their email addresses are on here if you want to contact them. They've all agreed to continue to chat with you. And of course, you can always come to the Ifbta if you want to as well on that. So I'd like to thank the panel, and I'd like to thank the Restaurant Association and the IT community and the study group for allowing us to present. So Kevin, it's back to you.
All right. Thank you. And thanks to the panel as well. It was a great discussion. And what's impressive to me is the amount of innovation that's been driven out of such a tragic situation that we're in. But I think and our next session is going to be about transformation. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity that comes out of what we've been through in the last 9-10 months. So thank you all for your stories, and we're going to take a break. We come back at 1:20 for structuring a path forward and transforming. And you will find that link in your invite. So we'll see you in a few minutes. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.